Dr. Robin, they say that anger is a secondary emotion, and under anger is grief. And my therapist is telling me that all of my anger that I'm holding about my childhood really is grief. And if I would allow myself to mourn the childhood I didn't have, if I would allow myself to just grieve everything I went through and grieve what I didn't get, then I wouldn't feel so angry all the time. Is that true? Is anger a secondary emotion? Is it true that under anger is another emotion? And is it true that I need to mourn? And how do I mourn? How do you mourn for something you never got? Like, mourning is like a funeral. How do you do that on your own? Have you ever wondered about this? Have you ever been told that your anger is a secondary emotion and that it's covering up a deeper emotion? Have you ever wondered, how do I grieve for the childhood I never had? How do I let go of all of this anger I carry and do something else with it? If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Today, we're going to talk about how to mourn the childhood you never had. But first, if this is a topic that interests you, if this is something that you think about, please click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. So to the first part of your question, yes. It is true that anger is a secondary emotion, and often anger is covering up a deeper emotion. There's a famous quote by C.S. Lewis that I'm about to butcher that says, I met my anger and asked it to take off its mask, and underneath it was sadness or grief. The idea that, yes, very often our anger is covering up a deeper and much more vulnerable emotion, an emotion that is much more threatening to feel, because sadness takes away our energy. Nobody really likes to be depressed and sad. It's nice to watch a sad movie and cry a little bit, but no one wants that dragged down, sad, mournful feeling that we get when we're really, really, really mourning and grieving something. That's not a pleasant experience. Nobody enjoys that. But yes, underneath your anger about your childhood is likely a lot of sadness. Now, in terms of your anger, I just first want to point out that your anger serves a useful function. When we are angry, this gives us the energy to solve a problem or to set a boundary. And very often, when we're talking about a traumatic childhood, a childhood in which somebody was abused, neglected, shamed, blamed, hurt, treated developmentally inappropriately, that's a childhood that you need some anger to escape from, because when you get angry, you set a boundary, right? So perhaps you had a relative who really treated you horribly your whole life. Maybe that person shamed, blamed, belittled you, made fun of you for things that were normal, like crying, really hurt and harmed you. And now in adulthood, they say something to you and you're like, no, you do not get to talk to me that way anymore. Why? Because likely you felt anger. And that anger gave you that energy and that passion and that conviction and that ability to set that boundary and say, no, you don't get to treat me this way. You don't get to talk to me this way. I am not going to allow you to disrespect me. I'm setting a boundary. This stops now. So I don't want you to necessarily let go of your anger, in the sense that if your anger is what allows you to set a boundary, and if your anger is what allows you to solve the problem of whatever happened in your family of origin, and it gives you that energy to break the cycle that almost broke you, if you're able to do that because of your anger is valuable. But what you want to do is say, thank you, anger. Really appreciate your help. It was useful. You helped me set this boundary that I never thought I'd have the courage to set. You helped me solve this problem, and I needed to solve this problem. But now I have really broken free of this. and I'm in a whole different life. And right now you're distracting, and you're also not letting me look at who's standing right behind you and process what's standing right behind you. And yes, very often what's right behind anger is sadness and grief. So I understand the dilemma, because mourning usually does imply some form of a funeral ritual, some form of saying goodbye, of letting go, of transitioning. And it's very difficult to mourn an invisible loss, right? It's like it's hard to mourn like a miscarriage. It's hard to mourn a breakup that not a lot of people know about. It's hard to mourn a promotion that you were passed over for, right? Because those things are not public, so they're not demarcated. So that's difficult. So what I am going to suggest that you do to mourn your childhood, to mourn the innocent 5-year-old child you were before someone started abusing you, to mourn the little girl who walked on eggshells around her parents' moods and who was always a people pleaser because she needed to keep the adults around her happy, and therefore she became so anxious and so self-doubting and so eager to please, and yet so self-deprecating and so hyper-vigilant. But before that, she was an innocent, adorable child, and that version of you, that innocent, adorable child, was deleted. And maybe it's an inner child now, but it's not who you are today. You've lost that joy. You've lost that innocence. Maybe you're mourning a time of your life. These are all things that do deserve to be mourned. So what I suggest you do, it's going to sound silly and out there, but it's simply for the exact same purpose that we hold a funeral when somebody dies. I suggest gathering together a group of friends, perhaps fellow post-traumatic parents who know what you're talking about, and say, you guys are my circle. I want to hold a funeral for the me that was destroyed when I started being abused, for the me that was destroyed when my mother's borderline personality disorder just sort of like took me as its target. The me that was lost when, like for me, when my father got sick. I want to have a funeral. And I want to make a eulogy and write a eulogy for that little girl. And I want to talk to her the way we would talk to a dead person at a funeral. And I want you guys to be the people who bear witness. Like they say in IFS, the witness, right? The person who is with you throughout it. Maybe it's having a funeral with your therapist. Maybe it's a group of really close friends who get it. Maybe it's with your spouse, right? Maybe it's with one best friend. But let's sit and let's have a eulogy. And just like in a funeral, like the expectation is that they'll bring food and casseroles and you'll sit around, and depending on your culture's community, like what your community does for funeral rituals, you're lighting a candle or you're having a wake or you're drinking a toast in the memory of whatever you do to mourn. We're going to have a funeral for that past me, and I'm going to eulogize her. And just like at a funeral, when we eulogize someone, we talk about, here are qualities you had that I will carry forth. Like you're having a funeral. I remember like at the funeral for my father, and people were talking about how he would go out of his way to help a fellow person in need, and how he would literally give the shirt off his back to charity because that was him. And how, so many people were helped by him in so many ways. And people, when they were eulogizing, they were making promises to him. I'm going to be inspired by you, and I'm going to look for people who need help and offer them my help. If I see a kid who's struggling, I'm going to reach out a helping hand, because I'm going to take the inspiration that you gave me and carry it forward. So you make some sort of a promise to the past you that you're eulogizing. Little innocent 5-year-old me, you were so joyful. I am going to make sure to have a silly moment every day with my kids in your honor, in your memory, because I want to carry forth your legacy. I want to honor you. I want to pay tribute to you in that way. Maybe you buy a piece of jewelry that commemorates that past you and you wear it. Maybe you decorate something, a keychain that you always have on you in memory of, right? And maybe it's, I'm going to do arts and crafts because you were joyful and creative, and I want to honor that. So I'm going to share art with my kids because I want to honor that part of you. But the idea is you actually have a funeral. You allow yourself to feel sad. You allow the fellow mourners at the funeral to comfort you. And like I said, that might just be your therapist, that might just be your spouse, that might just be your best friend, and that might be a group of friends. Maybe it's a group of post-traumatic parents you met here, and you have that funeral and you mourn and you really are sad. You let yourself feel all the sadness for that past version of you, maybe for all the things you didn't get. Like whenever I watch TV and I watch, this show and I see this mom treating her children so kindly, I feel sad for you because you never got to experience that. Know that I am giving that to our real world children. I am carrying forth this legacy for you, in honor of you, to help you. So as you talk to that past version of yourself, and as you tell this past version of yourself about how you're going to mourn her and miss her, and really feel it, and you give yourself a little while, like after a death, we sometimes say the first few weeks after a death at work, don't expect me to give my best and be 100% on, because I'm just not going to be. When I've experienced something really stressful, I've experienced a loss, I'm mourning for something, even just something where one of my kids reaches the age that I was during one of my traumatic memories, for the next couple of weeks, I'm not going to fully be myself. So this is the time to break out the boxed dinners or dinners from the freezer and not stress myself out to cook. Maybe this is the time to plan a fun outing with my family, because I'm more on edge. So if we go out and have fun together, I won't be irritable, and I'll remind myself of the joyousness that is my life now, and I'll reconnect, because very often sadness identifies a loss. Sadness also points us in the direction of relationships we value, that we want to enhance. So I'm going to honor that. I'm not going to stress myself out exactly the way I would honor, the death of a person. The anniversary of my father's death, I would say the week leading up to it and the week after, I don't schedule very stressful things. And I make sure to, have prepared meals in the house so I don't have to cook. And I very often try to schedule something fun and, cute with my kids, something joyful, simply so that I can restore myself to myself, especially towards the end of that second week, so I can transition back into my normal self. Because I want to honor the loss and the sadness and the part of me that's really feeling triggered. But I also want to carry on with my life, right? My children don't have to be damaged by my damage. My children, I can certainly talk to them about what I'm mourning for, and remind them of the legacy of their grandfather. But I'm not going to do more than that, because that wouldn't be developmentally appropriate. In the same way, if your children are very young, you might not share with them exactly what you're mourning for, but you might say something like, today I had a sad thought in my head and I'm feeling a little bit sad. My cuddle bank is empty. Anybody want to give me some hugs? Tonight, because I'm feeling sad, instead of eating dinner at home, we're going to have a picnic in the park so that I can cheer myself up a little bit. And you're also teaching them how to relate to their emotions, that emotions are kind of we are like the sky, we contain the emotions, and the emotions are like the weather. The emotions don't change us, they pass. And sometimes they can feel really intense, like a thunderstorm can feel intense, but it doesn't harm the sky. It doesn't change the sky. So in the same way, I'm feeling sadness now because I had a sad memory. So that's why I need some cuddles. And that's why we're going to have a picnic in the park so I can cheer myself up. More than that, they don't need to know, simply because it's probably not developmentally appropriate for them to hear how you were abused. But using that to say, you know what, I'm giving myself time and space and grace to mourn. And I'm going to let myself mourn until the mourning feels complete. And perhaps every year I'm going to celebrate the anniversary on a day that's particularly meaningful in this. And during that day, I'm going to give myself grace. And that's okay. You're allowed to mourn. You're allowed to be sad for what you didn't have. You're allowed to mourn not just what happened to you, but what didn't happen for you as a result of what happened to you. Give yourself permission and space and grace to do that, and you will see that then the anger, while still there because you need it to set those boundaries and you need it to solve those problems, won't be as intense. You won't be ruminating about it. You won't be holding it and carrying it so much. Notice I didn't say that you have to forgive. You don't have to forgive in order to not hold on to an ever-present sense of anger. You can simply say, I'm moving past, I'm moving on without you. but I don't forgive you, but neither do I want to engage with you, and neither do I value this relationship enough to repair it. But I also don't want to hold on to this anger. And in order to stop holding on to this anger, I need to fully feel the sadness and the grief and the loss, mourn it, and sort of put it in a box, because you're going to create some sort of a memento, some sort of a tangible item, and then you're going to put that away in the same way that we would bury someone. You're going to put that away and have that memento, and perhaps once a year check in with it on some sort of a meaningful anniversary. But allow yourself to mourn and know this is not like silly and hokey and, like artsy fartsy or, like whatever. This is just a way of marking a loss and moving past it, moving through it, and honoring a legacy so that we can make it meaningful in some way. If you like this content, if this spoke to you, if this is something you needed help with, please click subscribe below. Send it to a friend who perhaps has something that she needs to mourn or is holding on to some anger that this friend doesn't want to hold on to. If you want to hang out where the post-traumatic parenting community hangs out, check out at Dr. Koslow at Psychology on Instagram. And of course, check out the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast, where I interview experts in trauma and parenting, available wherever you get your podcasts. And the Post-Traumatic Parenting book, keep your eyes peeled for it. It's coming out in 2025. Till next time.